It's Bernard Nomberg with another weekly episode of Nomberg Law Live, and I've got Lauren Sisler here with me. Thank you, Lauren, for being here this morning. You guys know Lauren. She's been on the sidelines the last 7 football seasons. She is a former gymnast in college. She is now a fried chicken expert, or we think. But Lauren, I appreciate you being here for a few minutes. We've got a lot of good topics to talk about, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate getting this opportunity to come in anytime that I can come and just share my story and really just reach out to people and reach out to the community. It's always a blessing and an opportunity.
Well, you are everywhere these days. If you haven't read this episode or this issue, the August 2018 of Birmingham Christian Family, Lauren shares her story, and we're going to get into that in just a few minutes. So Lauren, tell folks what you're doing currently. What keeps you busy these days?
Yes, I am all over the place. So full-time, I work for AL.com down in downtown Birmingham, and so travel pretty much all over the state and all over the SEC, covering Alabama and Auburn football primarily. But we obviously cover a multitude of things, as you alluded to, fried chicken. So that series will be coming soon. Looking forward to that with my buddy Ike Morgan. And so I do that. I also work for SEC Network and ESPN. I primarily cover college football and college gymnastics there. I'm also part of SEC Nation, which is the pregame show on SEC Network every Saturday morning from 9 to 11 Central Time, that is. So you can watch that as well as we cover those things with Laura Rutledge, Marcus Spears, Paul Feinbaum, and Tim Tebow. A lot of fun. We always have a great time getting to travel all over the place, but it's really a blessing to be part of that, and then obviously getting to be part of the community and do various things to give back and help out.
Certainly. Well, you're not somebody who sits around. I know from a social media standpoint, you're always on the go. So thank you for spending a couple of minutes with me today. I know it's not the same as having an audience with Charles Barkley or Coach Saban,
well.
but thank you. Guys, Lauren, one quick topic I want to get into. You were a college athlete, and I know that as a former college athlete myself, or at least on a roster for 4 years, it's a heavy burden being an athlete in college and doing all those off the court or off the floor, off the field obligations, because you went from, as most athletes do in high school, you're a big fish in a little pond. Now you're a little fish in a big pond at Rutgers.
Yep.
So share with us, how did you maintain that balance? How did you do that?
In high school, so what's interesting, I'm from Roanoke, Virginia, but I later moved to Giles County, which is also home of Marty Smith, who's on ESPN. He always jokes with me, how do I have this accent and you don't?
That's right.
I got a little bit of an accent, but we went to the same high school. Of course, he says he's a fossil compared to me. But I actually trained in Roanoke, Virginia. So when I moved to Giles County, which is right outside of Blacksburg, which is also Hokie country, high five to the Hokies, I was still driving an hour to an hour and a half each way to practice every day. So the demands, especially in gymnastics, because gymnastics is not a high school sport because of liability issues and things. So it's very rare that you see a lot of people competing in a high school sanctioned gymnastics. So I was traveling and I had that commitment. But to your point, you go off to school and suddenly you're demanding the demands are so much greater. The course credits that you're taking, and obviously adding to that the demands of the sport. So you're not only training in the sport, but you got to take care of your health, take care of your body. You have to be in the weight room, you have to be lifting, cardio, whatever it may be, in the training room when you've got injuries. All those things are very important, and so being able to manage that, blocking out that time. So most students have 7 periods where they can say, okay, take a class here, take a lunch break, I can study here, manage their time that way. We have to mark out another 4 hours of time in that time span, plus traveling on the weekends.
So going from high school to college was a real transition, but then during those years in college, you really, at least my remembrance of the way things were, is it really then trained you, not just for those 4 years, but now for the next 40 years.
Absolutely.
And then tell us how you transitioned your gymnastics career and being that type of an athlete then to what you now do for a living.
Well, and I definitely think that those things teach you the discipline, the time management, the skills that you need to be able to succeed in the work world. Because adulting, we all know, is not very easy. And, we all sometimes have to learn that the hard way. But it is a transition. And so being able to find those skills that time management, the organization, the goal setting, I think is very big. And so I think for me, it really, as time went on throughout my entire career, from high school to college and making that jump and transition to adult life, those things definitely play a big factor. And I definitely think it has helped here in the sports world as well, just from a variety of perspectives and standpoints. So, very fortunate to have that.
Well, as an outsider, not personally knowing you and seeing you on the sidelines and hearing you report and reading in various magazines about your story, that's what has led me to contact you a few weeks ago. You have a very personal and real story that I'm so appreciative that you're about to share with us. So thank you for doing so. You were a freshman in college when your world changed. And if you would, just share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so just to paint a picture, growing up, it was my mom and my dad, and then my brother Alan, who's a couple years older than me. And as far as we were concerned, we had it made. My parents were always there for us and our successes, to pick us up when we were down. They were very supportive of all of our athletics, our academics. My dad coached. My mom was always there in the gym, made sure I was always there on time, packing the meals, making sure we're fed. And, ultimately we had a great relationship, very close with my parents. And so, as time went on, you go to college. Most kids tend to rejoice in the fact that their parents, they're kind of separated and it's starting to transition into that next chapter in their lives. And, for me, I was still very much close to my parents. I went to Rutgers University on a scholarship, which was 8 hours from home, but I still stayed very much connected. There was not a day that went by that I did not call my parents just to check in, to say I love you, to get encouragement if I had a bad practice, you name it. And so, I maintained that open relationship with them. So I would consider my parents being, two of my best friends. And so it was my second semester at Rutgers, and turning in for the night. I just finished studying for exams, set an alarm clock, and I remember waking up abruptly to a phone call about 1 o'clock in the morning, and on the caller ID it said home. And my father was on the other line, and he said, "Lauren, I need to talk to your brother. Do you have his phone number?" And so, I gave him his phone number, and I said, "Well, Dad, what's wrong?" And he said, "Lauren, I just need to talk to your brother." I said, "Dad, I can tell something's wrong. What is wrong?" And he said, "Lauren, I'm sorry, but your mom's passed away." And I remember in that moment, those words just cutting me like a knife. My mom passed away. Like, how is this even possible? And I'm still groggy, and I'm thinking, surely this is a dream. There's no way this is even happening. And so he said, "Lauren, get on the next plane you can to Roanoke, and I'll be at the airport to pick you up." And so I start packing my things frantically. I run downstairs. I bang on my one of my good friend's door. He had a car, and so he was able to drive me to the airport. And I remember what seemed like was just a 2 or 3 hour flight seemed like an eternity, as you can imagine. All I wanted to do was get home and jump in my dad's arms. I just wanted to have that consolement and somebody to be there and to really provide answers for what had happened. And so I, get on the plane. We land in Roanoke. I get off the plane and go running through the terminal, go to baggage claim, and grab my bags. And I remember running through those doors outside and looking everywhere for my dad. And he was nowhere to be found, and it was almost like a ghost town. And then within a couple minutes, my Uncle Mike and my cousin Justin pull up to the curb and pick me up, and they get out of the car, and we're hugging, and there's a lot of tears, but not a lot of words. And at that point, I'm just really confused and wondering, where's my dad at? And so we get in the car and we start driving, and I finally work up the courage to ask my uncle. I said, "Well, Uncle Mike, where's my dad?" And my uncle finally pulled the car over and said, "Lauren, I'm sorry, but your dad's passed away too." And I remember in that moment thinking, how is this possible within just a few hours of each other, both of my parents passing away? And really, with no answers. Nobody had an explanation for this. And really, those answers would not come for many, many, many months, with toxicology reports and determination of what ultimately happened that day and that evening with both of my parents. But ultimately, what took my parents' lives were prescription drug overdoses. Both of them fentanyl, which is a time-release pain patch, and both of my parents had been seeking pain management for several years, and my mom had degenerative disc disease, which required multiple surgeries in a time span of a few years, and my father had chronic back pain as well as PTSD from his service in the military. And so they were really battling a multitude of things, but ultimately the pain, and so they were being prescribed medication, and what started out as OxyContin eventually escalated to fentanyl. And for those of you who don't know, fentanyl is actually given to terminally ill patients, and it is the most potent drug that is on the market today. And really, my parents never should have been taking something as powerful as that. But they were seeking pain management back in the early 2000s when it was brand new. Not a lot of people knew much about it. And it was back when the people were demanding help for their pain. They needed that help. And so, you know, with time and kind of understanding of what ultimately took my parents' lives, I still look back 15 years later and just can't figure out what led them down that path and why nobody could help them.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Lauren. I know that you have shared your story many times, but I'm sure it's not an easy one to share. But I've also noticed how beautifully you have transitioned over the years and become now a spokesman for awareness and prevention. Unfortunately, one of those lists that Alabama does not want to be high on, but is our per capita abuse of opioids and prescriptions and other types of very harmful medicines and drugs when they're abused. And through your efforts, I know that you're a spokesperson now. If you would tell us a little bit about the organizations and what they do.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate in the last few years to have the opportunity to get involved in the community. And one of the charities that I work for is the Addiction Prevention Coalition here in Central Birmingham. And really, we try to reach out and touch you know, the central Alabama area as well as around the rest of the state. And it's twofold. Number one, it's the recovery element. We try to give people those resources. If you go to the website, that's apcbham.org, that's Addiction Prevention Coalition, apcbham.org, there's a Rolodex of resources that people can get help. Everybody's problems and issues look different, come from a variety of you know, sources, and this gives people that avenue to go on there confidentially and figure out what they can do to get themselves or someone they love help.
Well, that's education and knowledge and information is key. For me personally, anytime I can educate myself, inform myself, it's less stressful because I know more. I can make decisions better, and it sounds like this organization is that space where you can go either publicly or privately and educate yourself. And we'll put it in the comments section here on the feed. Lauren, what organizations does that organization then either feed into or have relationships with that other folks who are watching this in the mid-state area may know of? Well,
and I think that's an important key component to it. So at the Addiction Prevention Coalition, we also have chapters, and what happens is we go into the school systems, and the goal is to get in front of this thing, because obviously there are people struggling with this, but if we can get in front of it, educate our younger generation, educate our students, and prepare them, equip them for those hard decisions they're going to have to make, those choices that they're going to have to make, or just to know that these prescription drugs are out there. What do you do with them? What are some signs that if you are prescribed something to be on the lookout for, to avoid going down that path? And so we partner with different coalitions around the state. You know, people that are trying to do the same thing, whether it's in Homewood, Vestavia Hills. The mayors of this area have joined forces and have been providing summits and breakfasts to really educate the community on, you know, how impactful this disease of addiction is, and the negative impact it has on our entire community, because addiction is a family disease and it affects everybody. And so there's also many resources, places people can go to get help and treatment. There's Bradford, there's the Turning Point, there's the Foundry, just to name a few, but that's all listed in that resource recovery guide. But you know, these are all places people can go to really kind of get a hold of this awful disease of addiction.
Whether it's for yourself or the person who you love or in your life, this is the place to go. And Lauren, I certainly, on behalf of myself and anyone else watching, applaud your efforts from where you've come and what you've gone through and what you're doing now. So thank you very much for sharing all of that.
Yes, thank you.
You're certainly welcome, and I know you'll continue to do that. I kind of want to pivot for a minute. And I want to go back into the sports world for just a minute, as we're almost finished. And thank you for watching us. Of course, I've got Lauren Sisler here. We're on Nomberg Law Live. We come to you every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Central. Lauren, from a perspective, you've been in your 7 seasons so far. We're about to hit it in a couple of weeks. I want you to share with us an embarrassing story that you've had, and I want you to share with us a pretty good, fun, fond memory that you've had so far.
Embarrassing. Well, there's probably a lot of those, but one that I think about when I first came here to Birmingham, it was my first A-Day. So at Alabama, they do A-Day, and it's their spring game essentially. And prior to the game, they bring back the captains from the previous season, and they do a little ceremony at Denny Chimes, and they basically enshrine them in this Walk of Champions, and they put their cleat print and their hand print, and it's a big fun event. Well, of course, there's thousands of fans standing around waiting for Nick Saban and company to arrive, and I had to run and get some equipment. And I come back, and there's this circle of reporters standing around, and of course I'm just thinking, oh, everybody's just kind of mingling and hanging out. Well, I go blowing through this circle of people and didn't realize that there was wet cement right in the middle of this circle. So my brand new white shoes ruined. That's the important part, right?
That's right.
But no, really the important part was that I was like still a rookie and really like just didn't know what I was going to do, because I step in the cement. I go, oh my gosh, Nick Saban's on his way. I mean, they literally were like 2 minutes out.
Right.
And I was like mortified. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And essentially, my guess is that this has either happened before or that they were preparing for this to happen. So there was actually a crew out there that had a little spatula thing that came out, smoothed it over.
Right.
But I always say that I went down in Alabama lore as one of the team captains. Because I was enshrined forever.
All right, now I've got to ask, where you stepped, was that an important part of the ceremony, or did they? Where was this?
Well, it was so basically in Denny Chimes they have the blocks of cement, and it's each of the captains. So this was when Mark Barron, Dante Hightower, and Trent Richardson were being enshrined or inducted, and so it was monumental to say the least. Not very proud of that moment, but again, it happens.
If that's your most embarrassing story, I think you're doing okay.
Yeah, I think so. Hopefully.
All right, now share with us one of your most fondest memories.
Fondest memory. Well, I would say one of my fondest memories, there's a lot of them, and I think that I'm very blessed with the opportunity to cover a lot of big games. One of my favorites, the 2013 Kick Six. Sorry, Alabama fans, but it was one to remember. I just remember everybody rushing the field and being part of that monumental game that will go down in sports history. That was a big one. And then the Nick Saban, Charles Barkley that I produced at AL.com was a lot of fun. And so that was just something, putting him in the room together, watching Charles Barkley communicate and interview Nick Saban, and really just be able to generate a conversation where it really pulled Nick Saban kind of out of his shell and out of the coach speak world, and giving them an opportunity to talk about a variety of topics. So I'd say that was very high on my list. But the one thing I always want to remind people is that in this world and in this job, we get the opportunity in the sports world to cover a lot of the big games and events. And while the confetti falling on the field is great, the wins and the losses and the big interviews are all awesome, what I'm most blessed for is the opportunity to share the stories of others. Because everybody has a story, and I think that these stories have the ability to impact the lives of others. And to be able to put that story on a platform that gets it out to the world is so very important to me. And I use the example of Timothy Alexander at UAB. He essentially resurrected that program almost single-handedly. There was a lot of people behind him, but he really led the charge. And he's a paraplegic, and was in a car accident back in high school, and still found his way to the football field. He was not giving up on his dreams to be a football player. He was one of the best tight ends here in the state, and never gave up on that dream, and just met him at a baseball game. Happened to just meet him. He was giving out tickets at the UAB baseball game, and had said, hey, can I get my picture? You're on TV. And we took a picture. He claims he still has it. I want to see that picture. But being able to share his story and where he's come has given him a platform and the confidence to go out there and share his story with schools and universities and community, and it's just a blessing to be able to have that opportunity to kind of see that domino effect. And I don't think it's coincidence.
No, it's not. And it's those kind of off the field, off the court stories are really celebrations of life. Take Tim's story. He recently got married and celebrated one of the ultimate experiences in life. And what an awesome dude, and what a great guy for you to be interviewing and now have a friendship with. Guys, I could stay here talking with Lauren for hours. There's so many great topics. She's such an awesome person to be able to chat with. But alas, she has another job she really has to go to.
Yes.
But guys, thank you for spending some time with us. If you've got questions or comments, you're not watching this live, throw them in the comment section. We'll make sure that Lauren gets them. Of course, we're going to put all the contact information for the coalition from which she just spoke about. Guys, thank you for spending some time with us. Lauren, I can't thank you enough for spending some very good time with me today.
Thank you. An honor and a blessing. And thank you all for all that you do and all your love and support, as always.
Guys, again, this is another episode of Nomberg Law Live. We come to you every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Central. We hope that you've enjoyed this interview and gotten some well-meaning out of it, because there's some great information here. We'll catch you again next Tuesday at 10 o'clock.